The war against illegal bunkering and suit declared by Governor Nyesom Wike of Rivers State is yielding great success. Working on that mandate, the chairman of Ikwere local government, Samuel Nwanosike, is sustaining the raid against camps in Isiokpo and other areas. Our Arise correspondent Ovieteme George has the details.
It is a rough and dusty ride through the narrow footpath in Isiokpo. I alight at some point to join the chairman of Ikwere local government area, Samuel Nwanosike, when the road became so narrow to maneuver. We walk through the winding footpath and arrive at a wide expanse of land used for illegal bunkering activities in the forest.
Because the federal government could not deliver on their promise of giving Nodla refinery to the people of Niger Delta, Governor Nyesom Wike has now decided that the people of Rivers State has to be alive before we talk of governance. Soot has been causing cancerous diseases. People have been dying out of lung infection in Rivers State as a result of this action done by our young men and women.
Some tanks have already been destroyed, but the security personnel have strict instructions from the chairman not to burn them.
This soil you see here today cannot be restored. Even if you use the highest technology to return it back to its natural state, it will take 75 years. Imagine when we keep quiet and the whole of this our forest is taken over like this. What about the groundwater effect? I want to also commend the governor for the support he has given to the 23 local government chairmen. The logistical support, the financial support, the security he has directed to give us support to do this battle. It's a war. It's a war against a cartel.
Walking deeper into the forest, more tanks and crude oil refining sites are discovered, but there are also some makeshift camps where the fleeing operators take shelter at the close of work every day.
The Nigerian police and the civil defense have done their part. The IG and the CP, Rivers State Police Command, this forest has over 300 policemen armed to the teeth and ready for battle. Governor Nyesom Wike bought boats to patrol our waters and hand it over to Nigerian Navy. Nigerian Navy, this is the time to bring our boats and patrol this Choba Obodo River, this Old Calabar River. The Navy has to bring their presence. The Navy has to join this battle.
The illegal bunkerers have all disappeared into thin air when they heard that the chairman of Ikwere local government area was coming here. Now, he says he is committed to delivering on the mandate given to him by Governor Nyesom Wike to make sure this land is clean and rid of oil thieves, not just Isiokpo, but other parts of Ikwere local government area. Ovieteme George, Arise News.
There seems to be fire on the mountain.
There is. I'm just glad that action has been taken and it's given the kind of seriousness that it deserves. This is economic sabotage and beyond that ecocide, which has ruinous effects on people's health. You can't walk around with your own oxygen tank, can you? You're breathing this air. It's really unfair. And I like the way that the chairman of Ikwere local government said exactly what the solution should be. He called on the Navy to help. That's very important. It's not enough to say this is the problem. We have to talk about an effective solution. But the Navy recently, they have been taking action, not enough though. I have to say last week there were a few arrests made on this same issue by the Navy, but there's always that allegation that there's some collusion from the Navy. So what I would want to say, based on what he said, is that they should redouble their efforts and really root out those who are complicit, because there must be complicity with the security agencies. Root them out and prosecute them and put a stop to this, because it's really, look at this footage. We're sitting here in Lagos and we complain about, exhaust fumes, but look at what fellow Nigerians have to live with and breathe in.
Okay, the biggest problem to the people of the Niger Delta, total population about 20 million, between 20 million and 30 million, is the petroleum industry that they have in their, location. And the net effect of it, the major problem, has to do with the threat to the environment. And what has happened in this particular case is that the governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, made it a big issue in his New Year message, as I pointed out differently previously. He gave a mandate to local government chairmen.
It is a rough...
He gave a mandate to local government chairmen that they will be given 2 million naira if they are able to stop the activities of oil bunkers in their areas and illegal refineries that have been established in their areas. Okay, so you have the activities of the oil bunkers. You also have the activities, of the oil companies, oil spillage, running into millions of barrels. The most dramatic one occurred most recently in Nembe, on St. Barbara River. And we discussed that, for a very long time on this program. And I took the oil company and the relevant departments of government more than a month to be able to close the wellhead, from which that spillage was coming. And these are people in the Niger Delta who have been subjected to this eternally, perennially, continually. And so the governor says, look, this has to stop. One of the things that have also been identified in that part of the country is the burning of stolen petroleum products by the military. And all of this, of course, affects the people. The freshwater ecosystem in the Niger Delta is also affected. So it's good to see the example of Nyesom Wike, the governor of Lagos, of Rivers State, reading out the Riot Act, and for him getting the support of the local government chairman. The one that has been shown here is the Ikwere local government chairman. The other day, I think it was Obio Akpo local government. But it's a general problem that affects all the people, in that particular part of the country. And the state government, as I pointed out also previously, had in 2017 and also 2019 set up task forces. Those task forces, okay, yes, they make some arrests, they get some people sanctioned and all of that. But the thing to do is to do it on a sustainable basis. And perhaps for the federal government that has been cited in this particular instance, because Nyesom Wike, the governor, also referred to the role of the federal government. Can we take a look at the Petroleum Act? Can we take a look at the Enabling Act of the Department of Petroleum Regulations? Is there something else, that the NNPC's relevant departments can do to make sure that the sanctions against, all these elements that are involved in oil spillage, or to use your umbrella term, ecocide, are sanctioned appropriately? Because if you look at the laws, the Petroleum Act, is it the Petroleum Act of 1958? These days, as I grow old, I forget some of those things they taught us in the faculty. But in the Petroleum Act, if you look at it, you see that some of these penalties are very small penalties. And so it is easy for the oil companies to just do as they wish. Because if you look at the penalties under the law, there are things that they can easily take in their stride. So that's one area of engagement. And why is all this important? It's because the people of the Niger Delta, let's take it beyond the River State, they are entitled to having a clean environment. The whole world now is talking about carbon emission, keeping it down to 1.5%. This was the issue in Glasgow. This was the issue at the G7 summit. But the international experts say that, in fact, we are at serious risk. Greta Thunberg, right? Thunberg, that's her name. The young lady says, look, we all must follow science. And that elderly people, should not destroy the future of our own generation. So this is an important thing. And then added to all of this, lack of sanctions, poor regulatory framework, is the big issue of that climate change that the whole world is dealing with. And then you have a place like Port Harcourt that has become a hellhole, if I may borrow that word, which has become very fashionable these days. So the governor is on good track, and I think that the local government chairmen who have also bought into this vision, I think what they are doing in terms of protecting public policy and public health is also very important. But I would like to see those other governors in the Niger Delta who are playing possum on this issue to also wake up and stop playing possum and make an effort to also be aggressive in defending the environment.
Right. This is the subject I'm very passionate about, but I don't know if we have the time. I think I'm hearing in my ears that we need to go now. So I respect my producers and say that's all the news headline. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll have Rotus, Michael, Adesua, and Aaron to give us updates on Africa global business, COVID-19, and spotting activities across the globe. Thank you.
Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Our dependable Rota Sadiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning.
Good morning, Tunde. Good morning, Rufai. Good morning, Doctor. Good morning to all our viewers. We begin with, subsidy talk continues. Lai Mohammed was grilled by journalists saying, requesting clarity on what Senate President Ahmed Lawan said yesterday about President Buhari not giving approval for removal of fuel subsidies. When he was asked, as the Minister of Information and Culture, he said he needs to seek clarity from government agencies on it. It's just getting. I mean, when you think about one hand not knowing what the other is doing, and thinking that we had unity on this matter and clarity, he says he wants to get clarity from other agencies. It really pretty much looks like, as Rufai said yesterday, President Buhari is not going to budge on this subsidy matter. Prince Ndukagbaibana, in your exclusive interview with the president, he pointedly asked him about fuel subsidies, and the president now went on his answer, started veering towards security and having to secure the borders and an uprising if he were to do that. So I don't know what clarity he's going to seek at this point. There's an article, I think, is it The Cable or somewhere, about Zainab Ahmed being thrown under the bus. Doctor referred to that yesterday. So we await to see what clarity he's going to get from other agencies, and I don't know what else to say about this. Moving on to the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission. The U3 had the head of the Department of Petroleum Resources, which is now this new entity under the Petroleum Industry Act, saying that they've so far, from the marginal bid rounds from 2020, they've so far yielded 175 billion naira. But these bid rounds for marginal fields, swamp, some offshore, are supposed to, or onshore rather, are really for indigenous oil and gas firms here in Nigeria. There's only a couple lawsuits that are holding up payment for 2 more of them, but about 30 or so they've received full payment for them. The upstream regulatory, the upstream entity is looking at raising about, I think, 3.3 trillion naira this year. But as I've talked about in the past, issues with you're literally just talking about Governor Wike and also another this raiding of illegal oil fields, refineries rather. So there's issues with, as far as the profits that they're looking to get, the revenue they're really looking to raise this year. Environmental issues, vandalism, aging infrastructure, the OPEC cuts on production. I think they say they're losing about 115,000 barrels per day, which translates to about $300 million that's lost in revenue because they're not able to pump. But even then, there's a lot of upgrades that have to happen with respect to the infrastructure there and what they tend to raise. But, again, the marginal bid rounds, they've yielded funds, and we'll see how things progress going forward. I mean, this is just the bidding. There's still the actual action of going into the lands there and then, taking things further from there. To power, Godwin Obaseki, Edo State Governor, former investment banker, capital markets player, he says that the Benin airports and a naval base in Benin are Edo Queen. I should like this news. He says they're going to be getting 24/7 power from the Osiomo independent power plant. And I mean, look, it's 45 megawatts. I think it has a potential expansion about 95 or so. But the Benin airport should get 24/7 power. And when you think about the ongoing conversation around restructuring, moving things away from the middle, giving states more independence, not only over their own resources, but also to generate their own power. Is this not the model that should be pursued going forward if we want to fix our power situation in Nigeria? So there's that. And then finally, Coca-Cola Beverage Africa, they're looking at an IPO. I mean, they announced this in April of last year, but they're looking to list. I think they did an investor presentation recently. I think it was on Tuesday Tuesday or so, Wednesday, where they said that they're still on course for an initial public offering on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange and also in Amsterdam. And I think Coca-Cola Beverage Africa handles about 40% of production and distribution and so on the African continent. So it's pretty heavy. They're also looking at like spinning it off on its own. And that's been an interesting conversation when you think of outside of the beverage space in telcos, MTN and Airtel saying they will spin off their mobile money units. So Coca-Cola is looking at spinning off the Coca-Cola Beverage Africa unit on its own and looking to expand across Africa. Revenues are going back to pre-pandemic levels. They, at their investor presentation, they said, look, with the economies opening up again, folks are drinking more carbonated drinks. And so revenue should resume. And so, so it's going to be interesting. The Johannesburg Stock Exchange, they've had some delistings over the last year. So they're looking to get more liquidity in the market. Again, it's the most capitalized stock exchange on the African continent, $1 trillion. And that's our update.
Right. I mean, Rotus, the story of Coca-Cola just shows that the power of dream and innovation always continues. So many years ago when John Pemberton, the scientist, sold a little recipe in a kettle to Asha Candler.
Yeah.
Nobody would have thought that little recipe sold would be $1 billion industry and it will continue to grow. And that's what Coca-Cola has shown over the years. Concerning the subsidy, I mean, I'm not surprised that this is happening. We had seen something like that. You remember when the agriculture minister said, we're going to shut the border and throw the keys into the water, and somebody says, okay, we're going to open the border very soon. But we need that synergy in governance. You know why? Because it gives off a very bad vibe to people that are potentially want to do business here. But I know for a fact, based on what is on ground, that, and that's why it was quite it was iffy to me when the first mentioned the other day they were going to pull our subsidies. I'm like, before an election year, are you kidding me? No government will do that because they want to be on a high as they go into an election. But we should also not forget that subsidy should not be a political matter. It should be a matter of the cost and the numbers. Right. Does the numbers make sense? No. It has to go at some point because it's a sinkhole. And you don't ever come out of a sinkhole.
You just keep sinking.
You just keep sinking. So how we're going to do it, the best approach possible, they'll have to think through it. But it is a problem that the next administration
a big problem
will inherit.
Huge.
And concerning the IPP, I think that's the way to go. And that's why
the power situation in those states.
We keep talking about the we keep talking
the grid, TCN. Okay.
Remove yourself from this big grid. I think this big grid is military-esque in outlook. The world has moved beyond that. And I think Lagos started this idea a couple of years ago. They had something with Aaron, because I remember that very well, because it was built close to the Egbe power plant where I stayed for quite a while, after Ikorodu in Egbe. And I saw how it worked, but I don't know how that continued.
It's been abandoned.
So if we can have more IPP plants, and probably provide power and sell it at your rate. The shocking thing is, most estates
that a pun? The shocking thing? Okay.
Most estates, that's a pun, most estates are doing it already.
Yeah.
Most estates where you buy houses in Lagos are producing their power individually.
First, on the fuel subsidy, or what is otherwise known as the deregulation of the downstream sector. That's the technical word. But what everybody focuses on is removal of fuel subsidy. As a policy matter, the Nigerian government has been dealing with this for years, how the regime is unsustainable, and how economists, those who know, those for whom is their area of specialization, continue to say that what the Nigerian government is subsidizing really is inefficiency, is corruption, is rent collection, and that we cannot continue to do that. When you push the argument further, they argue about smuggling, why Nigeria has become a provider of cheap petroleum products for neighboring countries, and how Nigeria needs to put a fence around all of that and sanitize it. But what we've been getting since January is this back and forth contradictory talk among government officials. Yesterday, I said it looks like there's an attempt to, use Zainab Ahmed, the Minister of Finance and Budget Planning, as a scapegoat to make it look as if she's the one trying to push it. No, nobody should use her as a scapegoat. What we're told is that this is a policy of government. And this is not the first government that will deal with it. And if you look at Budget 2022, there's no provision for subsidy beyond June. Now, where is that money going to come from? So if you try to exonerate President Buhari and you say, oh, President Buhari is not part of it. No, my argument stands that, look, the president should take ownership of it. If it's government policy, it is government policy. There's nothing wrong about that. And then we deal with the consequences. So you deepen uncertainty within the system because of lack of clarity. And that is what we're facing right now. And they are perhaps doing this, as I pointed out again, because organized labor has protested, organized labor has given conditions. Now, can't government just, chest it out? In Big Brother Nigeria, there was a lady there who would say, oh, I'm doing this with my full chest. And the chest was quite full, figuratively. So the government should just, breast this up, with his...
What? Did I hear you
said breast it up?
No, I'm speaking English.
Did I hear you say what?
No, I'm speaking English. I'm not...
Doctor, you're the best. You're the best.
So we need that clarity.
Yes.
We need that confidence on the part of government. Why? Because this will have implications for our survival.
Yep.
And it's not something that government can do through the back door. Yes, if election is coming, if government doesn't have the confidence to do it, then government should just come forward and say, we cannot do it, because it could have implications for the election cycle that is before us. Now, as for the marginal rounds, okay, about 24 oil wells, about 20 companies involved, and about 57 oil fields. The big issue here has to do with the concern of the people of the Niger Delta. I know that in the first phase, 24 oil fields were assigned. You said 2 are subjects of litigation. But the people of the Niger Delta have been saying that, look, there are issues in terms of who you prioritize. We have a list of some of the companies that have been given that those marginal oil fields. But the concern of the people of the Niger Delta, who insist till tomorrow that they are the owners of the oil, because of the principle of quick plantatu solo said it.
What?
Such a good student. That's land law.
It's land law, yes. The law of real property. That anybody that owns something owns, whatever is attached to it. But the Nigerian government is saying in the relevant laws that, look, the whole of Nigeria owns the oil. That issue will still be there. So will there be community issues? What efforts are we making to deal with those community issues? There is a Petroleum Industry Act. There are specific guidelines in that Petroleum Industry Act in terms of licenses and leases. Now, who is going to do the oversight to make sure that all of that is addressed? So that you don't just give these, marginal fields out there and then there's no due diligence going forward. And the big issue was the issue we also raised this morning about the environment. So this, regulations, these guidelines, they are not always enforced. So there is a big role here for the Upstream Regulatory Commission, and we would like to see how, also in relation to these marginal fields licensees, how the PIA is operationalized. Okay?
Indeed. Okay.
So nobody should accuse me of any innuendos. I was saying something specific. Eh?
Indeed.
Fine.
Indeed.
You have been warned. Stop reading meanings into my...
Thank you, Rosa,
Thank you so much.
Cindy. Moving on to more business update, Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning.
Good morning. The big global news is China, and they have cut their 2 key interest rates, which is very significant because it shows that the world's second biggest economy is actually slightly worried. They're worried probably it's slightly too... Is too severe. Concerned might be better about the growth of that economy, and basically one of those lending rates is the one which applies to residential property. So that really can be seen as quite a significant move. The 5-year loan prime rate lowered by 5 basis points, which is from 4.65 to 4.6. It's the first cut since April 2020, and loan prime rates are the ones which also been cut, as I said, those for corporate and also household loans in the country. So let's move our attention. That's the big news, really, the big single item. Let's see how the Asian markets have reacted to that. They managed actually to shrug off the jitters on Wall Street, and mainland China markets actually rose very, very, very slightly indeed by 0.03 of a percent. The Hong Kong Hang Seng up 2%. Chinese property firms, therefore, came up very, very slightly as a result of all this. But again, a long way to go. Mortgages should be slightly cheaper. Whether that actually helps what's going in the housing sector remains to be seen. Now, industry comment about China and semiconductors, I think, is quite important this morning as well. China is it's been put. The industry thinks it's 3 or 4 generations away from developing the latest semiconductor tech. It doesn't mean generations as in my generation, your generation. I think what it means is in terms of technological leaps. But it's still behind on that. And as we know, for several years, China's been trying to be self-sufficient about those and actually stepping up its efforts because of the United States targeting companies like Huawei and SMIC with sanctions. Australia, we don't often talk about the lucky country, but we should this morning. Its rate, its jobless rate has lowered absolutely hugely over the past few months, and therefore people are looking to the central bank there for another rate rise. So that will be the Central Bank of Australia actually moving along with the other major banks in the world, either doing or thinking about interest rate rises. More about the Fed in a second. Let me just recap where the United States went yesterday. And it was a very choppy session on Wall Street yesterday, as you probably know. The Nasdaq's into what they describe as correction territory, all the usual worries. However, here's an important thing. Joe Biden, the President of the United States, said yesterday that he was fully supporting what the Fed was going to do. And in other words, tightening. And what he said was, given the strength of our economy and the pace of recent price increases, it's appropriate to recalibrate the support that is now necessary. That means interest rate rises and, of course, the slight reduction in the asset purchase scheme. Biden has also been talking about Ukraine. What he said is that he predicts that Russia will move in, as he put it yesterday, on Ukraine. What that actually movement means, whether that means invade or just go into the borders, how far will they go? That had to be clarified to some extent, I think, to Biden's credibility yesterday by White House aides afterwards. But what he's clearly saying is he wants everybody in NATO to be on the same page. Now, there are major differences here, and this is the normal kind of thing, I think, since time immemorial with partnerships and unities and so on. President Macron, for example, in France, has been saying that the EU should be pursuing its own discussions with Russia, possibly, which seems to me should be considering their own dialogue with Russia. Again, this is fairly dangerous talk. Brussels, once again, therefore, diplomats had to fill in between what the politicians are actually doing and saying, and had to say to Washington late last night, actually, we are on the same page. Well, we'll see about that. The EU publishes its minutes of the ECB meeting in December, which will be interesting because we'll see what individual members had to say about inflation. As you know, up to a 30-year high in the UK and high in Germany yesterday as well. And as far as the ECB is concerned, well, it'd be interesting to see what they feel about their latest figures there. As far as the UK is concerned, I think it's fair to say that that Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, has bought time in what most commentators are seeing as a relatively fragile truce between those people who feel he ought to go. Notably yesterday, a senior Conservative David Davis in the House of Commons, and obviously Labour was saying he ought to resign, but this is quite significant, a senior member of the Conservative Party saying that Johnson should go as well. Now, this is how it works. So what it needs is to have a confidence vote. 54 letters need to arrive at the Whip's office, the Central Conservative Party office in Westminster, and they think they've had about 30 saying that they ought to go. So it's getting there, but not quite at the moment. Is he actually buying more time? He's also cancelling a few of the COVID restrictions, ending mandatory mask wearing. I think lots of us will continue to wear masks, but also immediately stopping the instructions for people to work from home. So is life going back to the office? Well, we'll see about that. As far as corporate UK is concerned, Unilever has said it will not increase its £50 billion bid for the consumer health businesses of GSK. It's had a bit of shareholder revolt about that, and secondly, it's disguising that by saying actually it's had another look at the valuation it originally put on GSK's consumer retail section, and it's saying that its valuation of £50 billion is fair, so it won't actually increase that. The UK and the US are finally sitting down, apparently, to talk about steel tariffs. They begin those sort of talks today. And here's finally oil. I have been saying that oil is something, the price continues to rise. Great for people who actually produce it. But here's an important thing. Remember the words Permian Basin and think about the United States. It's an area about as big as the UK. And what it does is shale. And actually this rise in the oil price is breathing growth in the US shale market. We haven't seen that for a few years. But if you're looking at these kind of targets, which Goldman Sachs, I don't believe this, but Goldman Sachs are saying that a barrel of oil will be $100 by the end of this year. It's certainly encouraging shale producers who are already providing 2 out of 5 barrels of oil shipped across the United States. And the United States is on the move again. So that's going to be interesting. Don't forget these 2 words, Permian Basin. I leave those with you. Am I glad?
All right, great words. Only to think that, Michael, countries like Nigeria that produce oil ought to be smiling to the bank now, but we're not smiling. There's something called subsidy. I'll ask 2 questions. Number 1 will be about Joe Biden's America and the economic prospect. Everything looks down now for America. In hindsight, Michael, did you think that the Fed acted quickly enough to be able to hedge inflation by increasing interest rate? And would you think that too for, the Bank of England? Do you think they were too slow about this? And secondly, do you think that something is wrong in China? I don't trust that 8% growth, because if China is reducing interest rates to spur growth, then there's an economic collapse going on that China isn't telling the world.
All right, so China, first of all, I don't think there's economic collapse. I think what's happening is that the authorities are moving in a different direction. What they're saying is, yes, we know about the domestic property sector. That's where the big question mark is. We really don't know about that, do we? I mean, all we can do is we see what the public, the People's Bank of China has actually done yesterday and overnight by reducing these key interest rates. So we try to make informed guesses about who those should be aimed at, and they're the kind of loans and the kind of interest rates that they hope will encourage domestic property sector to regain where it was. Because I was telling you yesterday, reading a story over the weekend about somebody who bought into property and is now regretting it, can't even give it away. So that's the kind of problem that it's happening at the moment. And also yesterday did note that domestic demand appears to be falling in China, and they're going to be much more dependent upon their exports. And of course, reducing interest rates means that your currency is cheaper. So that means that exports are cheaper too. I'm like you, looking on at the outside of all this to try to guess what's going on. But that appears to be the move at the moment. As far as the Fed and the Bank of England is concerned, yeah, I mean, people here were saying that the Bank of England reacted too slowly, even when it put up interest rates very, very gradually in last December. And certainly a lot of people are saying that the Fed should have done it a lot sooner. What they're saying is that they're still casting a view. They're trying to work out what's happening with the employment situation there. But I think what the markets are telling me this morning is that a Fed increase, especially with Joe Biden coming up behind them, an increase in interest rates in March looks very likely. I think that a lot of people have been getting very worried about what that actually might be. I'm just once again looking at they're looking at like a 0.5% hike in March. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it'd be much more gradual than that. But certainly, central banks are on a hiding to nothing. But that's how they earn their money. And let's hope a more diversified Fed which is supposed to draw its opinion from a wider base of people, does the right thing with the US economy. But I go back to this shale oil business, the fact that that is growing hugely and people are driving, restaurants are filling, and shopping centres are actually beginning to bustle again. That to me says the US is not on a downward slope at all. Interest rates, different question.
Well, Michael, just two quick things. By way of update, these are issues we've taken before. The first is the UK-US agreement on tariff deals on steel and aluminium. 25% on foreign steel, 15% on foreign aluminium, and the UK imposing retaliatory tariffs on American whiskey, and also complaining about how this Trump-era imposition from the American side have been removed by President Biden with regard to the EU. Now they resumed the meetings yesterday. How long do you think this would take? Weeks or months? And how much of a factor would the Northern Ireland protocol that the UK has been threatening to do something about, and which is important to the US, how much of a threat will it be to the negotiations? Now, secondly, a group has suddenly emerged at the World Economic Forum. They call themselves the Patriotic Millennials. And, you know, they are led by a lady from the UK, a British entrepreneur called Gemma. And they are appealing to governments to tax millionaires more. But if you look at the list, you don't see the major culprits there. Those 10 people are mentioned in the report by Oxfam as holding on to all the wealth of the world, while over 21,000 people die daily as a result of poverty. Is this just you know, a way of showing off, or is there any such thing as patriotic millionaires?
Realistically, look at your own country. Do the richest people actually in your country or in the UK or in the United States actually share their wealth with poorer people? I don't think they do. Do they say they want to? Yeah, of course they do. But are they actually doing it right now? How would they be taxed? What would the tax industry think about that? What would their advisors say about that? What would governments say about that? Would you like somebody paying high taxes in your country? Yes, of course you would. Does it happen? No, it doesn't. Why doesn't it happen? Because these people are mobile. I don't think it's got any running in it whatsoever. I feel that the world will still face those kind of inequalities. As far as trade with the United States is concerned, I should, as a point of honor, say that, do you think that what the United States produces is whiskey? I don't think it is. What whiskey comes from Scotland. What the United States produces is something called bourbon, which is horrible. If you want to talk about whiskey, and I'm sure you would love to talk about it, in fact, I'd love to share one with you, but it wouldn't be American, it would come from Scotland. Yes, it is about time these trade talks actually got underway again, but I couldn't put an end to what they're going to agree, when they're going to end. It's like they always talk about trade talks as being, don't they, Doctor, as being a near-death experience. Well, that near-death continues. I mean, it's good that they're sitting down. I just don't know what's going to happen.
Well, thank you, Michael Wilson. Thank you very much.
All right, for COVID-19 update, Adeso Mara is here with us. Adeso, great to have you. Morning.
Good morning, Rafai. Good morning, Sunshine Tundu. That
Good
outfit
morning.
is yellows of sunshine.
Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning,
Queen
Dr. Bati. Well, it's definitely different strokes for different folks when it comes to this pandemic. The UK, as we know, is lifting coronavirus restrictions, saying that Omicron has peaked in the country. But in Algeria, schools are going to be closed for the next 2 weeks due to the rise in COVID-19 cases there. Meanwhile, in the rare show of protests in the Netherlands, due to the current restrictions, cultural institutions such as museums yesterday transformed into gyms and salons offering exercise and haircuts. Well, globally, we now know that there was a 20% rise in COVID-19 cases in the last 7 days. According to the WHO, there were 18 million cases in the last 7 days. And you should have the figures from the Johns Hopkins on your screen if you don't have them. There are about 320 million, at least 320 million cases so far globally, and at least 5.5 million people have died from the virus. third year into the pandemic, and over 9.6 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccines have now been administered. Well, here in Nigeria, 230 new infections and 1 death were officially reported in the last 24 hours. Lagos State alone saw 115 cases from those 230 cases reported in Nigeria. And over 13 million Nigerians have now received a shot of the COVID-19 vaccine, while 5 million others have shown up for a second jab. The difference in those figures from 13 million to 5 million, you can tell that a lot of people are not showing up for their second jab. This is a waste of resources, a waste of time, and exposing yourself and your loved ones to risks. Nigeria is in a race against time to vaccinate 50% of its targeted 111 million people out of its population by the 31st of this month, and then 70% of that sometime mid this year. Let's go away now from Nigeria to South Africa, where a South African-American businessman and doctor, Patrick Soon-Shiong, has opened a new vaccine plant in Cape Town. It's touted to be the first in Africa to produce COVID-19 vaccines from start to finish. According to Soon-Shiong, the factory should produce its first vials of coronavirus vaccines within the year and produce 1 billion doses annually by 2025. President Cyril Ramaphosa praised the development. He says Africa should no longer be last in line to access vaccine against pandemics. Dr. Bati was talking about billionaires doubling their money during this pandemic while the poor got poorer. Well, here's one billionaire making a good example of his money. Away from that, efforts to combat COVID-19 in the United States dominated President Joe Biden's news conference on the eve of the anniversary of his 1 year in office yesterday. Well, President Biden had promised a year ago to eradicate the COVID-19, but with the pandemic entering its third year, the president admitted yesterday he could have done more to stop infections, especially with testing. Meanwhile, earlier in the day, White House officials announced plans to distribute 400 million high-quality N95 masks for adults free of charge at thousands of pharmacies and other locations starting next week in the U.S., although the CDC says any mask is better than no mask. And for the first time, people across the U.S. can log on to a government website and order free at-home COVID-19 tests, regardless of citizenship status, and they will have them delivered by mail, but the test won't arrive for 7 to 12 days. Finally, this morning, the WHO is recommending that countries should lift or ease international traffic bans or travel bans as they do not provide added value and continue to contribute to economic and social stress of some countries. It also urged that countries do not require proof of vaccinations against COVID-19 as the only way for travelers to enter any country, citing inequality in vaccine distribution. At the moment, we have countries such as Hong Kong placing those travel bans on 8 countries, including the UK and the US.
Thank you, Adeswa. On the story that you shared just now about the US and the 400 million masks, it's really good to see America really kicking things into high gear at this late stage, but better late than never. But it's also very interesting, that story as well about the tests being sent out by mail. A lot can happen in 6 weeks. You'll recall, I think it was early in December when the press secretary for the White House was mocking the idea of sending COVID tests to people's homes by mail. And now it's happening. And I think the White House is responding adequately to different changes that are going on, and they're continuing increasing cases of COVID. But I do wonder why the richest nation on earth, as they're described, has been so slow to help the people, has been so slow with these tests that have been available in the UK since 2020, sent to people's homes for free. Masks have been sent to people's homes as well in the UK, as well, made available everywhere. You can order it online, you can go and pick it up for free. Why did America, why are they slow about this? It's disappointing.
Well, I think the N95 mask program by the United States is at one level part of the response of the US government to the increased rate of hospitalizations and deaths on account of Omicron. and they are leveraging of the federal pharmacy retail program using basically CVS, which has about 10,000 pharmacies across the United States, and Walgreens, which has about 9,000 retail outlets. And the whole idea is that, look, people can just collect these masks free of charge. But the good news is that the mask manufacturers are saying that they have the machinery in place to be able to meet the demand. So, well, you could say that this is in order. But the other development in the U.S. is that some of those companies that were told by the president in his mandate, in his vaccine mandate, that if you have more than 100 workers, then your workers must wear the mask and they must be vaccinated. Starbucks, has obeyed the Supreme Court ruling, and it's probably the first company to do so. In the UK, the question to ask is this. Is this driven by politics or expediency or science? Because you recall that Prime Minister Boris Johnson had talked about Operation Red Meat. The whole idea of Operation Red Meat is, to see how he can pacify the people. Because about 10 different, there are 10 different reports, 10 different indications of how Downing Street and senior public officials held their parties when the COVID mandate, the quarantine mandate was in place. Now he says, okay, given the efforts that had been made and the success recorded with the booster vaccination by the UK, there's no need to continue with the plan B, but that, the England will return to plan A, which would include the removal of working at home, the wearing of masks and all of that. But I guess the final decision on that is to be taken on January 26th. But will it save the Prime Minister, who has a big issue in terms of trust, in terms of the leadership that he provides? Yes, the WHO scientific experts have said travel bans are ineffective. Even the wearing of the quarantine mandate in many countries may also not help. But the reality is that in the last week alone, the infection rate with Omicron and even the Delta variant has gone up in many parts of the world, with the exception of Africa, where there has been, a reduction by a third. So I looked at that and I said, well, Africa seems to be perhaps the luckiest continent in this regard. While figures are going up in the Caribbean, according to the Pan-American Health Organization, PAO, and also in the US and in other places. In Africa, we're told that the numbers have gone down in the last week, despite the fact that we don't have the infrastructure. And even when we are given vaccines, many of our countries across the continent do not even have the capacity to administer them expeditiously.
All right, thank you so much at this. So I'm sure.
Let me just quickly respond.
Go ahead.
That the BMA, the British Medical Association, has responded swiftly to the plans by Prime Minister Boris Johnson. They say it is a bad one.
Oh yeah, obviously it was red meat, so it was giving them meat. It pretty much reminds me of Winston Churchill, giving the crocodile meat so it could eat you last. The appeaser mentality. So that's what Prime Minister Boris Johnson is doing. Not really based on empirical science, right? But it's fine. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you, Adeswa, for your time.